Hi guys, and welcome to another review. This time we have the Dunu Titan S. This is a remake, I would say, of the original Titan. I didn't have the chance to listen to it, but I do have the Titan S now here with me. Um, and yeah, let's get into it. Basically, this is the box. Simple affair. Nothing too out of the ordinary. Inside the IEMs came sitting over here with the cable wrapped up over there. We had a case there, loads of tips. I mean, they really didn't skimp on the tips, which is kind of already very much a Dunu thing. Okay, let me just, that's it. Let's put this away here. Okay, so box, simple. Some specs in the back, 32 ohm impedance, 110 dBs. Excuse me. It's got a 2-pin connector, and I'll get into that in a second. This is the actual case. It's a nice case. I mean, the IEMs don't really fit very comfortably inside, to be honest. If this was just a tad thicker, but it's a nice looking case. Looks good. It's got a nice finish on the inside and everything. And yeah, that's basically it. Anyway, so here are the IEMs themselves. Okay. And as I was saying, with regards to the connector, when you initially look at it, and I mean, you really have to give a proper tug on this cable for it to come out. It kind of almost seems like the cable isn't attachable, to be honest with you. But no, it is attachable. The shell is a very unique design. It's got like this kind of steampunk look to it. It's got, as I've already mentioned before, which seems to be something happening now recently, in an attempt to better tune stuff, that vent there is huge, and I'm talking about huge, proper huge. It's probably one of the biggest vents I've seen on an IEMs, of the ones I've seen, of course. It's got this grill in the back, which also seems to be vented. And yeah, that's basically it. In terms of the fit, it's not bad. I mean, it could be slightly more comfortable for me, I'll be honest, but it's fine. It's okay. I'm using the stock tips from one of the many types of tips that it brought. Seem to be an average bore, and they fit nicely. They secure nicely the IEM. They've got a decent weight to them. I mean, they're not the lightest, but they've got a decent weight to them. Isolation is, I mean, will be very much dependent on how it fits in your ears, to be honest. But yeah, basically that's it. It's got this very different take. It's nice. It's a welcome departure from so many of the stuff that's out there that's just, copy paste of each other. So that's nice. The cable is actually not a bad cable. It's a cable reminiscent of the cable that comes with, let's say, a stock melee or something of the sort. It's very, very similar. Some of Smart's products also bring a cable which is the same as this, so it's a decent enough cable. I mean, I'm guessing at the price point which the Titan S is located, which is roughly about $75-$80, and I want to thank Hi-Fi Go for having been able to get me the set. Well, they didn't give me the set. I bought it from them, but being able to supply me the set for review. And like I was saying, the cable it's decent enough. In this review, I'll actually be comparing it. Well, for me, it will be the two references of single DDs at this price point, which is about the $80 mark, which is the recently released T3Plus from Hi-Fi, and the more veteran Moondroop Aria. And I've also got another IEM which I've had for over a year now, and it seems to be getting some talk about now lately, which is the NF Audio NM2. Okay, it's these puppies here. It's also a 10mm driver, with some funny technology used by them. excuse me, when I say funny, which it's not in the sense of funny, but well, some weird technology. Some of these manufacturers have a tendency of making all these nice fancy names. But anyway, it's got this fancy magnet system on the driver. The shell is perhaps the downfall. Well, downfall in the sense of it's a resin shell. It's nicely done, but it's a shell which looks in every way identical to the shell that you find, for example, on an MT1 or a CS2 or something of the sort from TRN. So it's not a it could be somewhat more unique, like the Dunu, or then the T3 or even the Aria. It could be a more unique shell, but anyway, it is what it is. And I've put this IEM here, like I was saying, because I think it made sense, first of all, with regards to the other IEMs, and because I've actually got a pretty big collection. It's one of those IEMs that falls in the forget department sometimes, and because of all the traction that I've been hearing, I actually said, let me get this thing out and kind of also make a mini review of it. And lo and behold, I immediately was quick to see why I bought it and why I like it. Well, I've actually got the NM2, which is this one. I've got the NA2, which is the previous model to this one, and then I've got the NA2 Plus and NM2 Plus, which are the upgraded ones as well. So you could say I'm a little bit of a NF audio fan. Yeah, and that's it. So let's get straight into it. And I want to start by saying, maybe I'm going to be jumping the gun a little bit, but I want to say the following. They all have very similar graphs, and I'll show them to you. Well, not in a minute. I'll show them to you now. Okay. So this is all four of them graphed, and immediately two things will jump to your eye. One is that the Titan, which is the Titan. Let me get something here to point out this. So the Titan, which is that line there, is the one that's got the least bass, and the NM2 is the one that's got the most mid bass, and then the most energy up in the upper mids, the mids and upper mids. Okay, those are two things which are very they can jump straight to your eye. I'll start by comparing, or by showing you the graph of the T3Plus and the Aria. Mind you, and please keep this always in mind, the graphs I show you are the graphs of my particular IEMs, and using my rig, which is a 711, with all its faults it's got. So what I'm showing you is what I was able to graph and what I was able to obtain. And I usually graph all of my IEMs at least 4 times, sometimes 8, but all my measurements are done on a cycle of 4. And sometimes when I'm not happy, I'll repeat that cycle twice. So they actually get 8 measurements done. So if after 8 measurements, basically, I have a pretty decent consistency, I take it that is what it is, and that's it. So as you can see here, the red line is the T3, and the green line, well, can't really see it, but the green line is the Aria. And the one thing that immediately is very obvious is that they are almost identical graph-wise. I mean, it's actually scary. However, when you do listen to them, you notice that the Aria has a more colder presentation, has a more clinical presentation, especially in the bass. So it's kind of, I don't know, if I was going to compare this to nations or to people, I'm guessing you could say it has the coldness of maybe the German people are usually, not always, but usually more cold, while the T3 Plus is more kind of an Italian, more warm-blooded. So although graphically they look very similar, the reality is that tonally, timbre is different, and it's down to what is your preference. Do you like a more clinical, more apparently detailed sound, or a warmish, more lush sound? Either way, both of these IEMs are my references, or are my go-to recommendations at this price point, and they're both, I mean, especially the Aria, it speaks for itself. It's a beautiful IEM in terms of its mid-range. The highs, which were too aggressive or too sharp, or no, I don't find it. It's got just the right amount of highs for me, coupled with perfect perfect mid-range, so the vocals and the instruments are spot on. The bass, like I said, is where perhaps, and when you compare it with the T3, you might sometimes find that it's a little bit more clinical. It lacks a little bit of that little extra warmth that just makes it more, you know. And the T3Plus is basically the same thing, just that it has that extra warmth to the sound, especially to the bass. Okay, so that's a T3. Okay, so here we have the T3. Okay, yeah, let's start with T3 against the Titan. So here we have the T3 against the Titan, and again you see that from about 200 hertz up to about, let's say 4K for the sake of argument, they kind of match each other. Then there's some deviance, but basically the dips are in the same places, the peaks as well. So I'm going to be bold enough to say that from 200 hertz up, they are both equally the same. They're very similar. And it's from the 200 hertz down that you do see a difference. And that difference, not only do you see it, but you hear it. And what I'm basically saying with that is that the Titan S is very clean. It's got very nice mids, very nice vocals, instruments, but it's a little bit thin. And it's very noticeable when you listen to a T3 and you go straight away into it, you notice it's thin. Which is surprising because it has an 11mm LCP driver, while the T3 sports a 10mm driver, also LCP, the same as the Aria. So you would expect the bass to kind of be equal at least, and no, you notice it straight away that it's lighter. It's not as prominent. Okay. That is the same situation that you encounter with the Aria. The green line, the Titan, the purplish line. Again, you can see that they basically follow each other very well from 200 hertz up. There's a little bit of a difference there between 2 and 4K, but like I say, let's just assume that they follow each other very nicely. And it's just in the lower registers that again you find that coldness. Well, not coldness, sorry, that thinness. What does this all translate to in practical terms? It translates to a sound which is a mix between the T3 Plus and the Aria, in terms of vocals, in terms of the whole presentation of instruments and the amount of highs and how those are all matched with each other. However, it compounds further that coldness that you find sometimes in the bass of the Aria, and makes it even more prominent because it's thinner. So you definitely do find, at least with my playlist, I do find instances that I would like a little bit more bass just to complement things nicely. Having said that, however, not once did I find that the music wasn't enjoyable or satisfying or, in my opinion, properly reproduced. No, it was always quite well done. One more graph. Okay, and this is the graph of all four. And as you can see, straight away, the NM2 is the one that has the most prominent mid-bass. I mean, if you look here from 60 hertz to about 300, it's definitely got a little bit extra oomph, and it's very noticeable. You hear it very well. Again, there's a little bit more energy in that 2 to 4.5K area. And then the peak there at 8 is a little bit more prominent and just rolls off in a different way. But it's not here that you really notice the big difference. It's here and there. And what do you notice in terms of actual sound? Well, simple. What you notice is that there's more impact to the bass notes. Maybe some might say, oh, but that then doesn't render itself so audiophile. No, wrong. It makes well, let me go by parts. First of all, it does it very tastefully. So what it does, that not being 100% correct, let's put it that way, is done so tastefully and it's done so well that it actually is very engaging and very pleasurable to listen to. I didn't find any instances that the songs were congested by that extra mid bass, and because it then has that extra energy as well up top, it just matches very nicely. So somehow it has a very I don't know. I kind of get the sensation I'm listening to a monitor somehow. It is very pleasurable to listen to the NM2 because it just brings a whole lot of fun. And having said that, this kind of allows me to give a little bit of a conclusion, although it's not a conclusion yet, on where these IEMs are with regards to each other. So the Aria would be for me let's say the more adult kind of tuning, the more tuning that would please those looking for more correctness. Okay. The T3Plus would be basically the same thing, but with a little bit extra warmth, which might then not be as pleasing to the more audiophile demanding crowd. The Titan is the one which perhaps will, along with the aria, be the one that pleases the most, those that are more centered on the vocals and on the highs and all the detail and so on and so forth, so on the technicality side of things. So it would be a kind of an alternative to the sound signature that the aria proposes. And the NM2 is the fun one out of all of them, and I'll be very frank, it was definitely the one that was the most fun to listen with, because it has this energy that is very it's very intoxicating. It's very nice. You know, it's definitely was the most fun to listen with. How am I going to place them? Well, I'll get to that in a second. Getting to the technicality side of things, well, we already know the soundstage on the Aria is pretty decent. Not that the T3 Plus was that much behind. Perhaps maybe in imaging it was slightly ahead, but you know, in that aspect, detail retrieval I found as well the Aria to be slightly ahead of the T3. As for the Titan, how does it compare? Well, detail retrieval I would say is probably as good as the Aria, just slightly above the T3. Soundstage I would say is on par with the T3. Imaging as well on par with the T3. So I mean, yes, okay, you could probably say that the Aria is the one that technically is the most proficient, but the differences here are minimal, and these differences are based on what I'm hearing and what I'm listening. And when you look at my playlist, you will see. So it is not, perhaps not. You know, depending on what you listen, you might perceive otherwise. As for the NM2 and its technicalities, I found the soundstage to be pretty decent. I mean, I would say the soundstage probably better than the Aria. Okay, imaging as well better than the Aria. Detailed retrieval somehow, and I guess it has to do with that extra energy, it just gets a little bit congested sometimes. So detailed retrieval, definitely the Aria. So I would say again, you know, the differences are not huge. I mean, you know, always please keep that in mind. We're not talking day and night huge differences here. There are certain differences, but nothing too. In terms of timbre and tonality, in which is the one that sounds the more, you know, the more correct. Let's put it that way. Well, I love the timbre and the tonality of the T3. Definitely do. It's got a very nice tonality to it. I like as well the tonality of the Aria. I'm not gonna say I don't, but that bass, you know, sometimes a little cold. So I'm going to give it to the T3. In terms of timbre and tonality, the Titan comes behind. It's not that it's not correct, but that thinness of the bass just renders some male voices especially just a little bit off, and the tonality and timbre of the NF audio, yes, the NM2, also very good. I would say probably it sits somewhere between these two, even though it has that extra energy, which did somehow, in my opinion, in certain songs, perhaps hurt its detailed retrieval. Tonally, it sounds very correct. Um, so overall, I would say there's two groups. This is the first group, um, with regards to how sound is reproduced in an overall fun, coherent manner. Okay, and then these two are second group, totally distinct from each other, but even though this is fun, it just ultimately is not as capable of being correct across a wide range of music, and this one is just too thin with a lot of music. So perhaps not the ideal choice for, like, for example, for a rock lover, while this one for someone that likes rock would be perfect. In terms of its technicalities, they all, I mean, it's like I say, some win in one department, some lose on the other. So it's hard. At the end of the day, what I'm basically trying to say is that these two are definitely still the ones that I will point as references, or as the go-to options, my first go-to options. However, having said that, and this is this I think is important. What I'm about to say is, if you are looking for a single dynamic driver that is really a lot of fun to listen to, my rec is NM2, without a doubt. Okay, and if you're looking for a single dynamic driver, costing again about the same as all of these cost, between $70 to $90, that is more capable of being correct, and you just don't like, for some reason, the extra warmth of the T3Plus, and you like more the mids, and you're more mid-centric, more of a mid fan, then definitely the Titan S would be my rec. So I rec them all, honestly. I rec them all. These two are probably the more versatile ones, which will please more people. This one and this one will be more focused to certain particular groups of people. Fun, engaging, rock lover, for example, a person that's more of a mid-centric fan that wants, voices and vocals and all that, and instruments and all that kind of stuff to be properly portrayed. And yeah, that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this little take of mine. I really was quite pleasantly surprised with the Titan S. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting it. Very detailed, very clean, very clinical in its sound. The only real thing that I thought was a pity was the fact that the bass could be just a little bit, a little bit more thick. And it was a pleasure to remember how the NM2 actually plays, and I even recall when I did the review of the NM2 Plus, of the NA2 Plus, sorry. I recall mentioning even that for me this one was still my option, and out of all of the NF audio stuff that I have, this one still stands as the one which I believe is the most that makes the most sense. I honestly believe that it's a superior IEM to the NM2 Plus and the NA2 Plus. It is a very fun IEM to listen to, very fun. Okay, anyway, guys, take care, bye bye.